one of the unique things about that weekend will be if things hold the way Michigan's proposing a potential 2-game suspension for Sherrone Moore in weeks 3 and 4. That Sunday, he kind of goes away for 2 weeks. If things play out this way, like from you being in the spot at Baylor and at Cornell. And I remember talking to Jake Butt about this a couple years ago before Jim Harbaugh's first suspension in 2023 about what a head coach does on game day. But now the rules changed where if you're suspended for a game, you're suspended for that entire week as well. Like, this may be a dumb question, but could you take us through from a player's perspective, like how important it is or what the head coach's role is throughout a week and on game day, and how important it is to have the head coach out there, especially maybe early in a year when maybe your routine and your rhythm isn't what it will be towards the end?
I think every program is probably different to some extent as to how their head coach operates on game day. Like Steve Sarkisian's calling the plays for Texas, so obviously his impact on game day is a little bit greater. But I think the phrase that comes to mind for me that probably fits across the board is tone setter. Like, you get off the bus, you're looking at your head coach. How is he? What's his vibe? Is he walking out with a level of confidence? Is there some energy? Is there all the cliches, all the unquantifiables? I think that's kind of the temperature that's set on game day. But if he's not calling plays, it's not a thing to where you necessarily feel their presence as much. To me, it was always more for us at Cornell, more of like a check-in with the head coach. Good drive. Head coach comes over if he's not calling plays, and he's saying, hey, what'd you see out there? Hey, we like this. We don't like this. And just sort of a level almost of like composure that's added to it. But my biggest question here for Michigan at that spot in their season is, how much have you game planned for Oklahoma from this point in the year through fall camp up to that game week? And then also, outside of the games with Nebraska and Central Michigan and things of that nature, how much are you prepping for those games? Because I have to believe what's true right now about Nebraska in week 3 of the season or week 4 of the season is going to be different than what's true right now about them at this point during, entering into, as Clayton Safey mentioned, the start of summer. So, because coaches will game plan for teams, as y'all know, like very, very far in advance, but that game plan obviously shifts a bit by the time it's actually time for the game to be played. So, I don't know if that answers your question, Clayton. There's a lot of thoughts there, but to put it simply, tone setter on game day, game plan during the week, how much does that switch leading into the foreseeable suspension from Sherrone Moore?
No, it definitely does. I think the scary part for a 2-week suspension like this with not being able to be around for the week is that they'll play a game against Central Michigan in week 3, and then kind of that Sunday and Monday when you have to evaluate the prior game and start the game plan for the next game, like you just won't have your general with you. And, they have experience on the staff. Chip Lindsey's been a head coach before. Biff Poggi is back on the staff, which I think was a huge addition, especially now considering the suspension. Wink Martindale's been around football forever. They can get it done, but it's just different. Like it's Sherrone Moore's program and he won't be there, and that's pretty unique. So I think that did answer it. That's good stuff.
Well, what I was going to add in there, and you guys have mentioned this a lot on the side as well, about how he's not going to be there during the week to do the game planning, whereas Jim Harbaugh was there during the week, just going to be there on game day. The big thing for Michigan when Harbaugh was there, as I'm sure y'all mentioned when this was all going down, was like that was a veteran locker room with a lot of leadership already there. Not saying that's not going to be the case for Michigan in 2025, but it's going to be early. Like if you're playing a true freshman quarterback, you're looking to some of those guys internally to step up, be the leader, set the tone, kind of steady the ship a little bit. I'm really, really curious to hear about where they're at weeks 3 and 4 coming out of a spot like that. And let's imagine the worst case here. I don't know if that's a positive thing to do right now, but if you drop a game to Oklahoma before Sherrone Moore pivots out for his suspension, how much does that impact the psyche of the locker room? How much do you have to steady yourself? Because I think if you beat Oklahoma, it's going to be a lot easier to ride that momentum, ride that belief, good vibes into the game against Central Michigan and ultimately Nebraska.
I think part of it's helpful too in that Michigan is looking to self-impose this. So from an operational perspective, maybe you're just part of your off-season planning is getting your staff the reps of, hey, this is what this is going to look like, almost like a mock situation room type of exercise, I guess. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. piggybacking off of Sherrone Moore, and last year was a bit of a transitional year, but ends on the highest note imaginable in that last month of the season. You land Bryce Underwood, you drop a 50 burger on Northwestern that nobody saw that coming. You beat Ohio State, you beat Alabama in the bowl game shorthanded, which kind of felt affirming of what the last 2 weeks of the season were. What was your perspective on last year under Sherrone Moore, and what's on the line for him from a national perspective this year? Clayton and I have both kind of said that there was some grace, or there was. It's weird. It's been this roller coaster where there was this honeymoon period, then you start 5-5, but then you have the last month of the season that you land Bryce Underwood. So now it's all of this juxtaposed against a potential suspension that they might be dealing with. Michigan kind of needs to win this year, and he might not be out there for part of it. So I guess, from your perspective, what do you think of the start of the Sherrone Moore era, and how do you view this program this year?
My initial thought is just what you said with the way they finished last year. I remember even after the Ohio State game, I remember thinking this is probably as bad as Michigan's going to be under Sherrone Moore from a talent perspective. Like, I would be shocked if we're sitting here in 3 years and saying, man, Michigan just doesn't have the guys this year, especially with how they're recruiting, with what seems to be the NIL activation, all those things. And so if that's the case, and you're still beating Ohio State, who won the national championship, and you still beat Alabama shorthanded, like you mentioned, Alabama had their opt-outs, whatever, like, what's keeping you from, with a serviceable quarterback, even if he's a true freshman in Bryce Underwood, what's keeping you from going on and winning at an even higher level in 2025? And I totally get that college football is a wacky sport, and sometimes, as we all know, things that make sense in May don't make sense when we get to October and November. And so there's some degree of that to account for. But on paper, if that's what Michigan was a year ago, with all the talent, even if it's young, I don't see a reason why Michigan can't make some noise and be a team that's knocking on the back door of the college football playoff. Like, I don't know if they're going to, be there for the Big Ten title game. I suppose they could, and a lot of that will happen with what Bryce Underwood is and what they have around him. But just the DNA of this team, to me, still feels so, for lack of a better phrase or label, like Harbaugh-ish, which I think is tied to Sherrone Moore-ish. Tough, make you say uncle, physical, win line of scrimmage, all the cliches. And I think as cliche as it is, it's cliche because it's true, and it's been true of what Sherrone Moore football teams are. Now you add in a all-everything potential, quarterback in Bryce Underwood. So it's weird to say, but I do think, just like you mentioned, it is sort of like, okay, it's year 2 for you, true freshman quarterback maybe, but like let's go win right now for Michigan. Let's go be a team that finds a way in the playoff right now.